Welcome back to episode 2 of Dentist on Air. Today we have another special guest, my actually eldest cousin. Paymon is an aerospace engineer, and he has been living in Tucson for I think more than 10 years.
Yeah, actually coming up on 20.
Yeah. Oh, 20.
So,
Wow. I wasn't expecting that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and so I got the pleasure to be living in Tucson with him and this past year. And Payman is American, born and raised, born in Dallas, actually.
Yep.
Yep. And he has traveled to Iran a couple of times. And I was born and raised in Iran and then moved to States. So this episode we're going to talk about many different things from different point of views of two different people living in two different countries, raising actually, growing up in two different countries, and then now living in the same country. Um, so hang in there. We will be with you. Please fasten your seatbelts. And welcome back. So I'll let Payman to introduce himself and we go from there. So welcome, welcome.
Yep. Thank you, Cheyenne. So yeah, my name is Payman. I've been living in Tucson for the last 20 years. I've grew up in the US. I am currently an aerospace engineer working out here as well. Um, Other than that, that just kind of gives you a little bit about me.
Welcome to Dentist on Air and thank you for accepting the invite. So I'm gonna just jump because to the questions that I have listed. As my point for this episode was to, express different point of views that it's going to help different people, duals especially, that have backgrounds or specifically in our case, Iranian American background. So maybe it can help them to realize and think about different things, not only the duals, but their family members as well. Things that I have thought about and struggled. And I was wondering to get your point of view on it as someone who has grown up in the US, in opposite to me, who's first like someone growing up in Iran. Um, you know my background. I was born and raised in Iran, and then I lived in Canada for a part, and now I'm here. Um, and on the contrary, you lived in Dallas. You were born and raised in Dallas, and then also lived in Arizona for a while.
Right.
Um, Now a lot of things are happening in the world right now, and I like, especially on social media, I get to hear a lot of different things that are happening, and a lot of people with different point of views who express things that may be on the contrary to my belief. Um, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start with a few questions to see and get your opinion. Okay,
Yeah, let's do this.
awesome. So Iran situation is not very pleasant right now, with the war happening and everything. But even starting January, it was first the massacre that happened, a lot of protests that took place, and that the government actually did kill a good number of Iranian citizens, and the internet was shut down. And it was kind of a culture that was going on that, I mean, we were all trying to be their voice and raise awareness that, hey, in Iran, the internet is down. We need to do something about it. We need to raise awareness, let the world know what is going on in there so they can, make it silent and just kill people and do whatever they want. So we were all posting things about it on social media to raise awareness. And there was a point personally for myself that I felt I just cannot do this anymore, like for the sake of my own mental health. And I was like, I need to focus because it was affecting me, like even at work. And I was like, no, I need to focus on myself. Um, And then I got attacked on social media that, no, why are you not posting anything? Why are you not doing anything like to support? And I'm like, guys, I did my support, but the fact that, I cannot post currently doesn't necessarily mean that I'm opposing or I'm not supporting the people. We may do it in our own ways. And later on, um, what happened was that, you get these different types of things, and some of our own family members reached out to me and told me, this is the way you should do or behave simply because you were born in Iran. And when I questioned them that if it's someone else that's born in the US, would you say the same thing to them? And they were like, no, it's because you are American. You're not American born, so you're not allowed to put America first, or you're not allowed to live the American way. Because you were born in Iran, you will always stay Iranian, and you should act a certain way. Which I totally found like illogical. As I personally think you are permitted to live and think any way you want, as you're the only person who determines your future. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to hear your point of view on it.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, because you were kind of explaining, some of that and some thoughts that crossed my mind.
Yeah.
With social media and the internet, that's kind of dominated our lives over the last 15, 20 years or so.
Hmm.
People are able to kind of express their own opinions and their own views, and
True.
that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
It also can make it really overwhelming. You had mentioned,
Hmm.
you had mentioned that you would, with the onset of the war and everything, that the internet basically just exploded. And if you take some time to actually go through some of the posts and stuff like that, you can really get lost in a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be a little overwhelming, and sometimes I have to give myself a mental break. Um, but so growing up here, and I've had the opportunity to grow up, not only to grow up in the U.S., but I've had the opportunity to travel around the world. So, for example, I've been to Iran multiple times,
Hmm.
um, and so I've kind of seen some of the culture there with Iran and how it compares to the culture here in the U.S. And in the U.S., it's we're approaching the 250th birthday of the U.S., which is
Happy
which is
birthday.
amazing. Yeah, exactly. Coming in July. But I mean the first uh, one of our rights obviously is to freedom of speech, and so
Hmm.
we have the opportunity to be able and the right to be able to express our views and all that, without let's see, what's the word I'm looking for, without
Feel
without
retaliation, or
retaliation or
yeah,
anything
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And so I've grown up in that society, and a lot of people have grown up a lot of us have grown up in that. And so we're able to post what we want. In what I've kind of seen in Iran, it's not hasn't been the case there. Now I'm not 100% on Iranian history and stuff
Hmm.
and all of that, but prior to the Islamic Revolution, you guys had the Shah that was in power, and there were more rights there and such. Maybe not to the degree that here in the U.S., but still a lot. You know, a lot more. And then, after the Islamic Revolution, obviously that a lot of that has gone away. And I think that's kind of, something that people have at least in Iran have grown up with, that even the ones who are acclimated to, who have had the opportunity to see Western culture, whether it is through online or whatever, they've had the opportunity to do that, but they've grown up in that culture, to act, they need to act a certain way, be a certain way, and they don't have the ability to the freedom to be able to do what they want. And I think that kind of spills into a lot of people's thoughts and such. So when you talk about what you were doing, what you were doing, and how people were, in the whether it was friends or family that were like, you need to, there's a war going on. You need to express your opinion and you need to express it this way. I think some people don't really realize realize that they have that they say that, but they've kind of grown up in that.
So
Since they've grown
so
up in that culture, kind
what
of
I'm getting
interesting.
is that you think it's part of a culture built
I
in
think
Iran,
I think it's
right?
part of a culture
Yeah.
build in Iran, and I don't think it's intentional. I think
No,
it's
yeah.
just the way
Hmm.
that people have grown up there, and generations
Hmm.
upon generation, and because of that, it kind of spills into kind of even in kind of like in a family type of thing. Here, if I've had the opportunity to grow up here, obviously, and the family structure here, at least in these last few generations, it's kind of gravitated a little bit more towards a liberal type
Hmm.
of family.
Hmm.
So, to in the back in the day,
Hmm.
years ago, yeah, the father was the head of the house,
Hmm.
and he was basically the one that would bring in the money, would work. The mother would actually be at home, take care of the house, and take care of the children and stuff like
Wait,
that.
this is the norm you're describing for the US, right?
This was the norm. I think, you know, uh, uh, probably right around, prior to the 1950s.
Okay.
It was kind of
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And then over time, as you went into the 60s and such, you kind of had this build onto, equal rights and being able to, whether go out and do what you want to do.
Hmm.
And it's kind of built up over time to the point now where, yeah, I mean, you have families here where both the mom and the mother and father work.
Yeah.
You have even ones where it's inverted, where the father will be the stay-at-home dad, and the mom will actually go out and work. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
that's going on,
Going
and
on. Hmm.
it kind of feeds into, you know you grow up, you're able to do what you want to do here. I feel like in Iran there's still some of that traditional value there.
Oh, 100%.
And
It's not even going away. And I was actually going to bring that up
Mhm.
because um you know, part of the culture I think as kids when we inherit is what we inherit from our parents.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and I know that you also have Persian parents.
Yeah.
So you probably inherited some of the Persian culture anyway,
Sure.
but I feel the effect of the environment is way more bold on how it shapes your personality, things you see around you, in the country, environment, and
Mhm.
community that you're growing up in.
Mhm.
And in Iran, the norm still is what you described right now,
Mhm.
that the dad is head of the father, the man is head of the family.
Mhm.
What did you say? What
Yeah,
did I
the
say
father is
earlier?
head of the house. The father is
I
the head
know,
of the house,
I know. The father is, yeah, the head of the house. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Um, and because he brings in the money,
Hmm.
and it's not norm for women to go out and work,
Yeah.
and they're meant to just raise kids at
Hmm.
home. And it's part of the Islamic culture as well. I feel during the Shah period, maybe it was a bit more liberal and then it got more religious. Um, but the thing was like in Iran, if a girl goes out and gets caught by the moral police, like for
Hmm.
not wearing proper hijab or
Yeah.
scarf or whatever.
Right.
Um, and then if the dad was supposed to go in and release the girl, the dad wouldn't blame the system. The dad wouldn't blame the government or the stupid moral police.
Hmm.
It will blame the girl. He will be like, "Why did you dress in a way that you got caught? Dress properly." You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like there's just this kind of dictation and habit which is built in the culture,
Hmm.
and it's and not that just dad being the head of the household, but being um, the ruler. I don't know, or I don't want to use the word dictator, but it is kind of a dictator because he dictates to the girls in the family, to the women in the family, to the children in the family.
Yeah.
more towards women, actually, I would
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
And he would dictate, this is the way you should behave. This is the way you should dress. This
Hmm.
is the way. And who decides that? The dad,
The
or
dad.
the
Yeah.
one who brings in the money,
Right.
technically. And I feel that's kind of like built in into the community as well, because when I look at the history, Iranian history, I feel everyone, like in every history period, there is one king, or now the supreme leader,
Hmm.
um, that was killed. And then it's like people keep selecting one person, not which is not a true democracy.
Hmm.
And it is because even at the family level, it's built in
Hmm.
into the system, into the culture.
Hmm.
So it is different. I know the whole mindset, and as you said, in the US is now way more liberal. I can't say for the past,
Right.
but I learned from you that this kind of the same thing lived in here as well, but in the 1950s, right?
Right. Yeah. You think of it prior to the 1950s and such. Yeah, that was kind of that was kind of the way it worked out here.
Yeah.
But we've evolved over time, and a lot of that is it's well, I mean, eventually the because if you kind of think about it, women weren't allowed to vote here for a long time, for a lot of the history
Yeah.
of the U.S.
Hmm.
Women weren't allowed to vote. African Americans weren't allowed to vote.
Hmm.
We've had our own kind of we've
Challenges.
had our own challenges. If you think like prior to the 1960s, if you were there was segregation. If you were white, you had opportunities. You had more opportunities than if you were black or African American.
Hmm.
And they had, separate schools, they went on separate buses and stuff like that. And it wasn't, we've evolved, through that, but it took a lot of hard work. And through the civil
Hmm.
rights movement of the 1960s, to
US
be
is a
able to
young
do that.
country, though, right?
It is a young
It's just
country.
like so much rapid changes in
Right.
such a short amount of time.
Hmm.
Although Iran is like what
Right.
for thousands of years, and I feel a lot of things still not changed here. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you think that all of this changes happen so quickly in the US?
It's interesting because if you compare the US to a lot of other countries, we're basically a teenager.
Yeah.
And we're still trying to figure stuff out. I mean, we've made a lot of, we've had a lot of good things that have happened, but, we're also a very diverse country. I
Hmm.
mean, we're essentially a country full of immigrants. Everyone here is an immigrant of someone. Well, unless you're a Native American.
Native American.
Um, but yeah, so there's a lot of, it's a country full of immigrants, a country full of people with all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts
Yeah.
of views and stuff like that. And and
So you think that helped the diversity?
well, the diversity, obviously, it hasn't been perfect, obviously, in the 250 years. I mean, we had a civil war in the 1850s,
Yeah.
between the North and the South, slavery in the South and the North. I mentioned the civil rights movement and
Hmm.
all of that,
Yeah.
but but a lot of the changes, the system that's in place here, the right to be able to voice your opinions, the right to protest,
Hmm.
has been in place. Now, it hasn't been perfect, but it's through the protests, through major figures that have been that have come and gone,
Hmm.
we've been able to implement those changes, and it has take time, but it is actually amazing that, and I never really thought about this, that how quickly some of these
Yeah.
changes have come in 250
I
years.
feel when you compare the
So
history of the US to any other country in the world,
hmm.
the changes and the evolvement happen here so quick. And I was actually talking about this with Tony
Hmm.
on episode 1 of my podcast, because he
Yeah.
was saying that if you actually look at it, US had three lifetime age, like a three lifetime of a person who age. If a person actually ages around 90 years or 100 years, technically US had, is like the age of a three person. You know what I mean? And then things happen so quickly and evolved so quickly. And US became, one of the largest economies and
Hmm.
number one countries in the world. So um, that that sometimes it's like it's going too fast that it may
Mhm.
actually cause destruction for itself.
Interesting that you talk about that too, because as humans, you know, we we don't like change.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Some of us are more adapting to change than
Yeah.
others. But if you think of like a whole society, change is not change does come with resistance. So, I'll give you an example, with the US. The US has had 250 years. And really the revolution, the American Revolution that happened in 1776 was born out of we don't want a king.
Yeah.
And,
America has no kings.
yeah, exactly. And so, a king should not make a decision and, was born out of that. Obviously, we have a president that we elect every 4 years. We have a Congress through the House of Representatives and the Senate. But we also have judges, and you think of like the three branches of government. Um, and it's the checks and balances that's in place that allows, and so with that, that's 250 years
Yeah.
of us, having this system in place.
Yeah.
And you think to recently, and I'll just tie in some recent US events.
Yeah.
If you think of the protests that have happened in Minnesota and Minneapolis,
Yeah.
with ICE coming in and the president kind of overstepping his boundaries through executive decisions.
Yeah.
You've seen the kind of how quickly protests have erupted. It's changed. Like we don't. It's the change that we don't want, and that change. Like, well, we don't want. Whoa. We don't want a king
Yeah, I know,
making
right?
those
They're like,
decisions.
hey, this should not happen.
This
Yeah.
should not happen. And so, that's what's happened here. Whereas, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've seen in Iran, has had a long history. And for a good portion of that history, it's been through a monarchy. Now, the last 40, 50 years or so, it's been through a dictator,
Yeah.
um, which I think,
Which claim that democracy does exist, but
yeah,
technically it
exactly.
is not.
But if you think of like the way that came about, you had a Shah that was in place,
Yeah.
and was kind of acquiring more
Hmm.
power
Yeah.
through that, and it made a lot of people uneasy.
Hmm.
Some people, were fine with it, but if you think of like some of the religious types and others, it made them really easy. I
Yeah.
mean, really uneasy through
Yeah.
change, and that's ended up one of the reasons why that sparked a revolution over there.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, most Iranians, or at least young Iranians, they want more freedom. They want to be
Oh
more
yeah.
westernized.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they want a full-on democracy like the US. I don't know if that will work just with the
Hmm.
diversity over there. But
Hmm.
I think they want something,
Better than that.
something better than
I
that.
I personally feel, growing up there, um, their requests are not like a lot.
Hmm.
They just want, I feel number one thing that Iranian people want right now is better economy,
Hmm.
to be able to afford living like a normal person, to be able to eat
Right.
3 meals a day,
Yeah.
to be able to live a regular life, have a house, have a car,
Hmm.
and then potentially maybe travel and enjoy life.
Right.
It's not a lot to ask, I feel, as a human,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, with the costs and everything going on, like even here in the US, not everyone can travel.
Right.
The flight, dude, the flight expenses are crazy. But it's just like, if you work, at least you can achieve it. You know what I mean? For Iranian
They want the
people,
opportunity.
yeah, they want the
They want to have the
opportunity.
opportunity.
Personally, why did I immigrate? Why did I left my life and just left everything behind and started from zero again? Simply because I didn't see any more room for growth,
Hmm.
And I feel the Iranians are seeing the same, and so they try all to immigrate. And then with everything happening in the world, and sanctions, cost of immigration, I feel it was becoming almost impossible for them to even get out of the country.
Sure.
So the situation is not good. They tried, they want to get out, they can't.
Right.
So what's the last option? They need to make changes from inside.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they protest. And So yeah, eventually that's what happened. And so for us who are here, living, which brings up my next question for you, um, as someone who has an Iranian background, but you were born and raised in the US, um, have this thought ever come to your mind that if it comes to a point where you have to prioritize between the two, would you prioritize the US or Iran?
In regard, oh, as far as what's going on and what
Yeah,
Iranians want versus,
because it is a point. It is my
yeah,
question these days.
yeah,
I even with the war like that's going on with everyone um on the social media, majority of the Americans, from what I'm seeing, they're against the
sure,
war. They don't want the war.
right,
Us
yeah,
Iranians who know how bad the dictatorship
mm-hmm,
is, and by all means, I feel we are all biased
yep,
because we have Iranian background,
mm-hmm,
and so when Trump actually attacked Iran, I was satisfied. I was happy about it
sure,
because I felt there is no other option. I felt a deal with Iran is not going to go anywhere.
right,
And the only way for the Iranian people to get freed is for these guys to be dead. And the only person who had the power was Trump, or the courage, I would say, at this point was Trump. And that's what happened. So yes, I support the war, but do I support civilians getting killed?
right,
No. Do I support the infrastructure of Iran getting bombed?
mm-hmm,
It is all going to come at a huge cost to repair.
sure,
So yes, I don't support that, but I look at it as like a medical example.
mm-hmm,
When you have cancer,
mm-hmm,
you do chemo, you do radio.
yeah,
Is chemo is going to be is chemo is going to be good for your whole body? No, it's going to have a lot of side effects.
sure,
Radio as well, maybe some permanent. Some of the radiotherapies will cause your whole salivary glands. I'm going towards
yeah.
dentistry.
But you're thinking of it, yeah, but it's for
It's
survival.
going to cause permanent, it's going to cause permanent damage to your body and tissues.
Sure,
But do people do it? Yes,
yeah,
because it's also going to kill
yeah,
the cancer.
also, yeah,
Um, Now, what's going to happen to this war eventually? I don't know. But if you look at it, and I did talk to a couple of Americans following me on social media to get their point of view, which I have to tell you, some people are really on the edge these days. Like not everyone's open for discussion,
yeah,
but the ones who were, one told me, go fight yourself. Why should Americans fight for your country?
mm-hmm,
And my response was like, oh, I felt I'm part of US right now because I'm a resident here and I'm also paying tax to the US government. So,
mm-hmm,
and not everyone's supposed to fight. But, and the other people, like generally, but the whole idea is that Americans think this war should have not started because they don't want their tax-paying money to go towards another war to free the people of another country, which I do not think that Trump is a person that would prioritize Iranians' safety. I personally don't think that. Probably it has benefits for the US government that we don't know behind the scenes.
mm-hmm,
Um, but anyway, I just wanted to give a whole picture of what's going on. So I was thinking to myself, okay, am I in favor of this war or not? Because my Iranian side is happy,
sure.
but my US side is not.
You're at conflict with
And
yourself.
I'm in conflict with myself.
Gotcha.
So, but my point of view, and I'm going to say this, is that because I'm living in the US and building my future here, I immigrated here.
Mm-hmm,
So this is the country I'm going to invest in.
yeah,
So for me, I think I should prioritize the country I'm living in
mm-hmm.
and its benefits and sakes. So what is your point of view?
Yeah, so I kind of look at it this way. So I grown up here, I went through I was here during 9/11. That happened. I was a senior in high school, and for a lot of Americans, and actually for a good majority of Americans, it's the closest they've seen something like that happen. In fact, it was the first time that we've been attacked on the homeland, by a foreign, foreign entity, basically.
Yeah.
And that caused a lot. I remember the uncertainty that came out of that. In fact, I remember the next day I was in school, and there was like, "Oh, are they gonna reinstitute the draft? Are people gonna get drafted for the military?" There was so much uncertainty, and there was such a rallying cry, or rallying to the flag.
I feel the fear
Yeah, it was a bit. Yeah,
because people thought
yeah,
it's
people
never
were.
going to happen.
Yeah, because people never thought it was going to happen, and now you've got all this uncertainty. So, when the U.S. attacked or invaded in Afghanistan and then invaded Iraq, there was a lot of support for that. And, that's the one thing about war. I mean, war is never good. I mean, war is never, people die. It causes a lot of heartache and obviously cost, in multiple things, And, but when it also causes a lot of uncertainty. The one thing about war is, it's one thing to go into a country and topple a regime or a dictatorship. It's another thing to be to know what's going to happen the day after. And so when the U.S. invaded Iraq, they took out Saddam Hussein. I mean, that was great. Saddam was a bad person, but what happened in the aftermath of it was, the U.S. had sent a lot of troops on the ground. There was a lot of fighting. The Middle East is a it's a very complex region, and it's not like a easy plug and play where you take one regime in and put in another one. And we were there for years, and it cost a lot of money, paid for a lot of it from U.S. lives and in civilian lives, even in the country. And so a lot of Americans, they have there's some PTSD that comes with that. And so coming out of those wars, there was this, we don't want to be involved with any, with foreign wars. There's a lot of stuff here that's going on at home. And I'm talking about your typical, American who's living here. There's cost of healthcare that's rising, cost of living is rising. Obviously, like cost, and your average American family could be living paycheck to paycheck. We need to take care of ourselves. Not that we don't care about anybody else. It's just there's a lot of stuff that's going on here at home. Why do we need to
Go after
go after
another country.
exactly? And I think now that we've Trump has decided to invade Iran, a lot of those thoughts and thoughts of the past, a lot of those ghosts are coming are,
Yeah.
are are coming up again, as
Mhm.
far as what is this going to lead to, and who knows.
No,
uh,
no
uh,
one knows what's going to happen.
Iran is a much more I mean, Iran is three times the size of Iraq.
Yeah,
There's over 90 million people who live in Iran,
true.
and a lot of different backgrounds and diversities in a country like that. One of the things that I worry about in this, and is this process hasn't been thought through. They're already finding out that it's taking a lot longer
Than
than
expected.
expected. What's going to happen after if we get to a point where the regime is gone and now you don't have an opposition group that can come into power? It could trigger a civil war.
That that's actually true.
That's one possibility out of maybe an
Many,
infinite amount of possibilities.
many. Yeah, I feel like a lot of Iranians in abroad, they're supporting well, the son of the former king,
Mhm.
um, Pahlavi, Reza Pahlavi.
Yeah.
Um, but how is that guy gonna go to Iran at some point? What's gonna happen? And does Trump has to approve that person? There were a lot of questions that why Trump should approve this person, and some people were saying because Trump is the one that making Iran free.
Hmm.
But personally, I feel the people should do something about it from within. But is Reza Pahlavi like a good candidate for the transitional period until the actual true election is held? Maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know. Because I'm not seeing any other person.
right.
better fit for a transitional period at least. But if it's actually going to be seated as the next king of Iran forever, no. Like, why would people sacrifice so much
Mhm,
to bring another king? You know what I mean? Even if he's the best person in the world,
mhm.
there's no guarantee his son is going to be a good person,
But
you know?
it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about change. You know, Iran, you know, before the Islamic Revolution, it was a monarchy, and you know, some people have thought of, you know, bring back the monarchy.
Oh yeah.
I
Because as I said,
yeah,
the people in Iran love dictatorships, the
mhm,
monarch, that system.
yeah. And it's yeah they're used to that system, and I'm not trying to speak for all Iranians here. I'm just trying to speak of it from a perspective of the history of the
Yeah.
country. They're used to a monarchy. They don't want a dictator, but I think it's something more that of a monarchy. The problem is that this regime has suppressed any opposition for decades now, that there really isn't an established opposition.
Opposition in
Even
place.
Reza
No, there's nothing in Iran.
even
Yeah.
Reza Pahlavi, who's he's basically spent his whole life in the U.S. I don't think he's never been to Iran. Um, not saying
I don't know
that
actually the
I'm
answer to
not
that.
sure, but he, you know, if he were to come back, let's just bring up a hypothetical of if he
Does
were
he
to
have an
come
idea
back.
of how the country
Well,
looks?
yeah, there's, you know, having an idea of what the country looks like, and having an established you know, government there. You know, he has to have people that he has in mind to kind of establish a skeleton government for a
Like a
transition,
cabinet. Yeah.
a cabinet. And look, that transition could be rough. And
Hmm.
look, I wish if I had a crystal ball, it'd be nice,
I
but
know,
it
right?
just, yeah, I'm, you know, if you think of, you know, just the history of any country who goes through a regime change, it's not pretty. And
No,
some
no.
are more ugly than others.
Yeah.
So,
So, going back to my previous question. So my um like my whole based on your answers, what I got is that you think that prioritizing the US for you is more important.
you know, it's interesting to me because you know, I have a Iranian background as
Yeah.
well. And so I would love to see a more democratic Iran.
Yeah.
I would love to see an Iran where, you know, I hope, you know, where Iranians can, you know, can have a future. I
Yeah.
mean, I've look at my own family who's still over there, parts of them who, you know, they've studied in school and they've earned PhDs, but they really have hit a dead end.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than just waking up in the morning and
Having
being
no
like
hope.
having no hope. And that's why you saw a lot of the protests. And so, but then there's this part of here, there's also a lot of issues that are happening over here. I mean, um, you think about you know, the cost of living that's
Yeah.
rising, home housing prices.
Mhm.
You know, 20 years ago, the average age for a purchase of a first home was, I believe, 28, 29 years
Yeah.
old. Now it's mid 40s.
Yeah.
And you think about like someone who's come out of college, I mean, you basically got to wait 15 years until you buy your own home, and then you've got interest rates and
Yeah.
your and such, and then you've got the cost of groceries, you've got healthcare.
Mhm.
That's been a big issue. We've had a lot of issues here that have
So
kind of just
you think that the whole money that's now being spent for a war could have
Mhm.
been spent to make things better inside?
It could have been.
Okay.
But I
So
also understand that there are
yeah,
threats from
Iran
outside
coming. Yeah.
that are coming as well. So it's very complex. But I
Mhm.
just feel that, you know, with what's happening over there, what the amount of money that's being spent
Yeah.
on not just in Iran, but
Yeah.
just in any of these foreign, you know, foreign issues,
So
some of that could
you're feeling conflicted like
I'm
me in
conflicted,
some way. Okay.
right?
So
But I can
I'm going
understand
to
the point of view.
simplify the question and let's see. And I'm going to answer it after you do.
Okay.
Um, if you were the president of the United States right now, and then they put two buttons in front of you,
Mhm.
attack Iran or no? Which one would you press?
Um, I wouldn't have attacked Iran.
You would not.
I would not.
Okay.
There are, and not just for U.S. issues. I feel the complexity of what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
I think we don't know what's going to happen from this in the next 10, 20 years.
Gotcha.
I'm not
That would
saying,
that
yeah,
I yeah, I
I'm
get
not
that. Yeah.
saying, to just, leave Iranians to fend for themselves. I
Yeah.
just believe, like, I obviously like killing the Ayatollah. That was great.
Yeah.
He was a bad guy. He should be that. But I think the way it's being done, I think
It's
the
not the
way,
right way
and it was, and usually for invasions like these take months and
in
months and
planning.
months of preparation and planning and working with other countries and working with allies in Europe
Hmm.
and in the Gulf Arab states. None of this was, I believe, was done. And now you've got, I
Like
believe this could have been done better.
like
And
so
now you've got, Israel and the US that are attacking, and
yeah.
I kind of feel like they're kind of winging this. And that's not a good thing,
Yeah.
especially in that region.
Fair enough.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
with your,
sometimes
yeah.
I did hear that opinion a lot the
Hmm.
past week. But how do we know that Trump administration did not actually prepare for this? Because I feel they're not saying anything
Hmm.
to anyone. Like it's just like not just on the war, on many aspects. I feel they're just keeping all the information inside their cabinet and not telling anyone. So maybe they were planning because at some point, I read on the news, I don't know the source exactly, but they were saying that they were tracking how these Ayatollah Khamenei, like
Yeah.
his movements, like for months
Hmm.
to figure like, oh, where does he go? What routes he takes so that when the time comes to actually kill him, do you know where he's located?
Right. And
So
yeah.
if they actually tracked him for a month, were they not planning for this
Yeah,
one?
so they were planning for it for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
there's the military part of it. Yeah, they were planning that part of it. And it's amazing the technology that's in place
I
for
know,
that type
right?
of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's, but this is, there's, like I said, this is very complex, and that's only one part of it. So I'll give you another part.
Okay.
So the U.S. attacked Iran, and the scenario that played out is not only did Iran counter by attacking Israel, but now they've attacked the UAE, they've attacked
Qatar
Qatar and all those places, and now you've got all these Americans
in different
in different
countries that
country
are helpless.
that are helpless because no flights are leaving. They're kind of stuck in that region, and when are they going to get out? And that's one of many different aspects of the planning
Okay.
that I feel did not
It should
happen.
have got
It
you.
should, and that's where I say that something like this takes months.
So if so they Trump administration kind of did their own type of planning,
Right.
which they thought it's enough, but
Mhm.
from many other Americans' point of view,
Right.
I'm getting that there were other aspects of planning that were not even thought of,
Yeah.
which for something this big, it should have been.
Yeah.
Oh, so um, if there was actually proper planning in place, um, like as you were describing,
Right.
would you then support?
Yeah, so there's no such thing as like 100%,
Yeah,
but it would have mitigated it. I would have been in support of it if it had been better planned out.
better planned out.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I believe, and yeah, to kind of rephrase that answer, I think the way that it was done right now, I wouldn't have been in support of it.
Support it.
I think with better planning,
Yeah,
with with our allies and the other aspects of it, I think, and look, this it's still, even in that situation, it still could turn out pretty bad.
pretty bad. I know
But
because
but I
it's
think that I
tricky.
would have more faith
Yeah,
in in
what's going
in
on?
what's going on than,
Yeah,
because right now it's one day, it's like night and day. One day, the government comes out and says one thing, and then they come out the next day and say another thing.
yeah,
Americans, we just want transparency,
yeah,
from the government.
yeah,
You're going out and doing this. Why? We just want that. And in the absence of the truth or of an explanation, people will come up with their own. And that's kind of the thing that that's valid in any type of situation. In the absence of truth or an explanation, people will start coming up with their own.
yeah.
So,
No, no, I get that.
mhm.
So, okay, that helps me understand better
Hmm.
um, as well, because I did face Americans on social media, which I had talks with them in chats that some were like in favor, majority were not, but some were actually in favor who are liberal people.
Hmm.
Because personally, I didn't approve of many things that happen with Trump administration in terms of ICE, in terms of,
Sure.
how they're handling things inside the US. Especially because if people are like, oh, Trump loves Iranians, but I'm like, that's not true. Um, because I feel like if he cared about Iranians, at least he wouldn't make life hard for Iranians in the US.
Hmm.
Um, like Iranians, I mean, not just Iranians, a couple of countries he named don't have immigration benefits. As an example, like their cases will just be pending forever under this administration
Right.
without going anywhere. So some benefits are getting redacted from them. And then I'm like, okay, so beautiful. Officially, I'm a second class resident in this country just because of my country of birth. Um, so there were many things that I always, posted against. And then usually the people who are against Trump are right now also against the war.
Right.
And it was interesting to me that I found a liberal person
Hmm.
amongst my friends who opposes Trump like me
Sure.
in many aspects, but in this aspect, in the war aspect, because I did put a poll on my social media
Sure.
yesterday, I was like, do you support this war or not? And it was interesting to me how people were responding to it.
Right.
And this guy, who's an absolute liberal American person, who does oppose Trump in many aspects like me, for this aspect, for the war aspect, he agreed. He said, yes, I support it. And when I asked him, okay, I actually want to know your point of view because usually the right wing people here, they all approve the war, and the left wing, they're all opposing it. Um, you are actually a Democrat person. I know you. You're a liberal, person, and but you are supporting the war. So it's like, so it's a bit different. And he told me that his reasoning is that it was the time. His answer was like, I think it was the time because it couldn't go any further longer.
Hmm.
And to some aspect, I agree with him.
Yeah.
Maybe with better planning, and I agree with you on that.
Right.
Um, but it was the time. And what he told me immediately after that, which approves your point of view on it, is that this better end out good.
Right.
Because he was scared with the poor planning, it
Mm-hmm.
may get screwed up.
Right. And look, it was the right time as far as Iran is at its weakest.
Yeah,
They don't have obviously they've been battling having a lot of issues at home and throughout the other conflicts with Hezbollah and Hamas.
yeah.
They pretty much have been degraded as far as their presence in the region as well.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, and there are people that do have those views, and I do agree with that. Um, that it was the right time to do that with, sanctions just you know, weren't doing anything.
Yeah,
Um,
not, yeah.
but
Because
yeah,
the people were suffering, but the government was not.
right. And I just, going back to what you had mentioned, and it's just, I think it could have been better planned because I do share those thoughts of I hope things don't turn out
Yeah.
really bad, but we just don't know. And you know, y- you know, 10, 20 years from now, we'll look back and we'll
And
have
we
a
were like,
better,
oh gosh.
yeah. And that's the case with any type of war. Any type of war, you just don't, it's just, I'm an engineer, I'm a math person.
Yeah.
And so, there's always variables if you think of an equation.
Yeah. No,
And the more variables you have, the more uncertainty that you have.
that you have.
And there's a lot of uncertainty
Yeah.
with what's going on there. And you can kind of see just in the
I,
last week what's
okay.
gone
Yeah.
on.
I feel that, looking at it variable wise, how you're opposing it. Yeah. And Again, like as I mentioned, like a medical example with the cancer,
Hmm.
for us, like when I think about an option, I always think pros cons.
Yeah.
Like trying, okay, um, chemo, radio, pros. You may get rid of cancer, and you may, it's not even certain in medical.
Hmm.
You may live longer because chemo alone might not even help the cancer, and you still, might die.
Right.
But so it may help you live longer and rid of cancer, but it will also damage a lot of healthy tissues, and you may have a miserable life.
Right.
Um, so it's pros and cons, and sometimes
It's a
even
risk.
I, as a clinician, I mean, with dental,
Hmm.
it's much less risks, much
Hmm.
less severity. I'm giving a cancer example, but
Right.
that's something that medical staff usually deal with. God bless them. I don't think
Yeah.
I personally can make that final decision. That's why I always try to describe pros and cons to the patients and let them make a decision for
Hmm.
themselves. Um,
There's a risk in everything that we do,
yeah,
and everything that any decision that we make.
yeah.
We can only make the best decision with what in the current moment
Current moment,
with
current
with
information.
the current information that
Hmm.
we have.
So, although a lot of people are opposing Trump, if actually they put those two buttons in front of me, and I would press attack.
Hmm.
I think eventually, even though I disagree with Trump in many aspects, for this aspect I approve. Because like I personally think it was time.
Hmm.
Now, could it have been planned better? Yes. I have no knowledge of how to plan these things. You
Yeah.
gave me better examples and help
Hmm.
me understood. Um, but yeah, so maybe yeah, it could have been planned better, but I think it was time as well.
Maybe we need a third button.
I know maybe even a third button. I don't know. What do you think a third button would be?
Um, Boy, that's an interesting one. I was just saying a third button just because of the planning.
Yeah,
I think I think that third button, not that,
I guess the third button would be a deal
would, yeah, but I don't know if, and that's the we don't have that information as far as whether there would have been a deal or not. There was a deal, um,
back. Yeah,
back
which
during
was
the
torn by Trump.
yeah, there was a deal that was torn. Yeah, exactly, that was torn up by Trump. Um,
Do you think if that deal was respected,
that's a very
like
good question.
what would happen? Like
Yeah.
maybe Iran would have stayed away from making nuclear weapon? I don't know.
There's yeah, and that's an answer that we'll never know.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Hmm.
it's an answer that we'll never know.
No,
Yeah.
fair enough. So yeah, I mean, I hope everything goes well in Iran. And I know as duals, we are all stressed these days. What we want is the best for Iranian people to achieve that true democracy. Um, but I do understand the point of view of the Americans living here as well and being concerned about it. Um, can we make any changes right now? No, because the war has already started.
Right.
So at this point, I feel the only thing that I can hope for is for it to end quickly
Right.
and with a good result,
Right.
hopefully. Because now I feel now if it had not started and it was up to discussion, that was a different story. But it's already started and damage has been done.
Mhm.
Um, in Iran, we have a saying. We say, I'll say it in Farsi, you probably understand, and then I'll translate it in English. We say "آبی که ریخته رو نمیشه جمع کرد,"
Mhm.
which means when water is spilled, you cannot collect it and put it back in the glass because it's already spilled.
Right.
Um, so the water has been spilled. The war has started.
Right.
At this point, a lot of people are trying to stop Trump from um, progressing. They're trying to, even there were votes in the Senate and in the Congress, like to stop the war power.
Mhm.
And I mean, it didn't pass, but
Right.
do you think it's right to make him stop the war right now?
I think he needs, because right now I feel like a lot of the decisions that are being made is Trump and his inner circle.
Yeah.
And if you're beyond that inner circle, there's a lot of experience outside that inner circle. I mean, you literally have decades and decades of experience, from like military, logistics, just all this experience from previous wars. There are all these knowledge that's not being utilized.
Yeah.
Congress is one of them, but there are others, and I feel like those aren't being tapped
Tapped
into.
it. Yeah.
And because of that, I think that's what some people are fearing
Yeah.
is because of that, we are kind of entering into a situation that could have been avoided if you had and you know that knowledge in the room.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to, better planning.
Mm.
And so, yeah, there was an effort with Congress to at least get not to get him to stop, but at least to have him come to Congress and explain. And that didn't go through.
That didn't go through.
And that's one
Hmm.
of the trademarks well, that's one of the big things if you think of checks and balances,
Yeah.
in the Constitution, it does state that,
So it
the
meant,
president must come to
yeah,
Congress.
it meant, I think eventually it may actually backfire
Mhm.
at Trump for his, political um, future in the US. But I think for Iranian people, it may end up well.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's the thing. You've got and that's kind of the two sides. You have
yeah,
you
which
know,
makes you conflicted.
it
Like,
makes you conflicted.
should I
And like
consider
yeah,
here or
exactly. And
there?
it's interesting to think about those too, because there's a lot of conflicts and you can't
Hmm.
really resolve
There's a
it.
lot of conflict of interest.
Nobody's
Yeah.
gonna, yeah, and the thing is look, I would love to, to have a scenario where the Iranian people are, able to come out of this well, and that the US comes out of this well. It'd be great in a perfect world.
Yeah.
But like I said, we don't know where this
Going.
is going to go,
Yeah.
both, militarily, politically, um, all these things. And this kind of has shades of what happened after 9/11. We just
Didn't
did
the
not
uncertainty.
the
Yeah.
uncertainty. Had no idea what we were getting into.
So I'm gonna ask a different question. Um, Now, another point of view that I'd received was people opposing the Iranian people being so in love with Trump because of fighting. A good portion actually of people in Canada, even here in US, um, some of our own, maybe even close family members, I'm not going to name them,
Hmm.
but they may be in love with Trump. Um, just because he has, done this. And
Hmm.
they, I think, believe that. And when I talk to them, they're like, oh, he's doing to make the Iranian people free. Do you think that Trump is doing this for the sake of Iranian people?
That's an interesting question. Um, it's I feel I feel that Trump, just based on his previous history, um, not that he's always thinking about himself, but in his, self-interest. I
Mhm.
think there is a reason why I don't believe he's doing it for the Iranian people. I believe he's saying it, but I do believe that there's something going on behind the curtains, whether there's, with the other countries or some sort of deal. And look, Trump's not the first person that has done something like this. I mean, we've
Yeah,
had U.S. presidents. The common theme with Iraq was, yeah, we're going to liberate Iraq, but reading some of the documentaries and such, it was really about the oil.
yeah.
And so there's a lot of that stuff that happens behind the scenes, and it's no different here, except Trump tends to make it more blatantly clear.
I know,
So,
right? He has
right,
no filter.
right. He has
Um,
no filter.
I
And
know.
so, and I think that's kind of the thing. There are a lot of norms of the presidency here that have kind of been broken. Presidents of the past had shown some restraint. If
Mhm.
they wanted to go to war, they come to Congress, they explain it to the American people. If they want to get a bill through, they would go through Congress. They at least made that attempt.
I think Trump believed
Trump,
in executive
yeah,
orders.
and it was only, and look, Trump's not the only person. There's just the right person. If you get the right person in place that doesn't believe in that, and this one kind of took the form of Trump,
Yeah,
now he's kind of exposing a lot of the loopholes, about that. And I think after we get past this, there's going to have to be a discussion on how we can, how the government can implement new reforms. And look, we went through this in the 70s. I wasn't around in the 70s, but for those of you who were around when Nixon was in power, he abused the Justice Department. Um, yeah, use the Justice Department kind of in a way for his own benefit.
Yeah.
And after he resigned from office, Congress tried to implement and did implement some new reforms to try to make it more independent.
Hmm.
And Trump is kind of giving us something new here that needs to be thought
It
of,
needs to be thought of.
right?
Correct.
Um, but as far as like going back to, Iran, certain Iranians who do who do love Trump for what he's doing. Kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of something that happened during, when I started thinking about the 2024 election and why so many people did vote for Trump. And when I look at it through my lens, why would you do something like that?
Yeah.
And when I started talking to other people, it started to make sense. We kind of talked earlier about how your average American family, is living paycheck to paycheck, cost of
Hmm.
living is going up, and all of that. And during the first Trump administration, in 2016 to 2020, if you let's take out the COVID year, that was kind of a anomaly.
Yeah.
For most of that presidency, the economy was doing great. Now, I don't believe it was from his own doing. I do think a lot of that was from the previous administration. And he also had people around him that held him in check. And
Hmm.
so when the elections came about, and a lot of people were kind of looking at that, well, Trump did, and these are people who may not be educated in current events, and not saying that they're not educated, their lives are busy.
Yeah.
They only have a certain amount of time to look at certain information.
Hmm.
And so when they look at that, they kind of had that false sense of, life was kind of better when Trump was in power. Whereas in the Biden administration, he actually did a lot for us. He got us out of COVID. We basically avoided a recession.
Hmm.
Um, but part of it was it wasn't they didn't explain it well enough. And a lot of Americans kind of looked at their pocketbook and they're like, well, we're not seeing these changes.
Hmm.
We're not seeing
They
prices
want the
go down.
final result.
Yeah, they want the
Like,
final
they don't
result.
understand that inflation is still in place,
Right.
maybe at
And the
lower
thing is,
rate,
for
but
someone like me or others who are more, who have the time to kind of look into this, they
mhm.
understand that, but your average American doesn't. And so that's kind of where, why you had people vote for Trump. Everyone has their own reasons for liking,
Yeah.
a particular candidate. And, going back to Iran, obviously Iranians have a kind of that bias of we want to see a free Iran. And Trump
Hmm.
was the first candidate, first president that was willing to actually attack Iran.
Yeah.
Basically, any president after uh, I'm already blanking out on his name, but well, I'll just say that
Yeah.
Bush Senior didn't do it, Reagan didn't do it, Clinton didn't do it, George W. Bush didn't do it, Obama didn't do it, Biden didn't do it, but Trump did. And Iranians kind of some Iranians that are like, we like him because he finally did it. Now, I'm not speaking for all Iranians,
Yeah.
but this is what the general consensus I'm getting. True.
But as I said before, it's the water that has been spilled.
Right.
So
Just like opening up a Pandora's box,
I know, and there's nothing we can do
or
about it
trying
at
to
this
put the
point.
toothpaste back in the tube,
The tube,
yeah,
yeah. It's just
exactly.
you can't.
You can't.
It's been spilled. So
Hmm.
at this point, I think it's just the good way is to just support him to achieve the best result or guide him
Right.
to achieve the best result. Because if this regime continues after what just happened, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how evil the Islamic Republic is going to be
Right.
if they survive this.
And that's another uncertainty.
Yeah.
If I mean, you do have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC,
Hmm.
that's still there. And one of those scenarios, one of many scenarios, is that they just say, "Hey, we're taking over," and now you've got a military dictatorship.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, that's a worst case
Yeah.
scenario. Not,
Hopefully not.
but like I said, there are other scenarios here. But yeah, I mean, like you said, now that it's happened, it's about trying to guide them in the right path,
Hmm.
trying to make sure that we can minimize civilian injuries. Injuries to U.S. military or and even other military personnel from other countries as well.
True.
It's not it's I mean war is not fun.
No,
So
no.
um
No, no, that was a good talk we had,
yeah
Payman.
yeah
I really enjoyed it. We shared our opinions on different things. I know there's a lot to talk.
yeah we can't do it in
We can do it in another maybe episode.
right.
But I think we almost have been talking for an hour.
Well,
That was nice.
time flies really
Yeah, time
quickly
flies
when you're
quickly.
having
I
fun.
know, right? And I appreciate, man, your point of view and for putting the time. At this point, I just wish and hope for Iranian people to achieve the freedom they deserve,
Yeah.
um, and also at the least cost to the U.S.
Hmm.
I think that's the best
Right.
scenario for everyone. And hopefully we see good results and maybe we can come back on this podcast on episode 2 and be like, hey, man,
Yeah.
look, it ended up actually
It-
not very bad. Like, or
right.
yeah. Um, yeah. And the damages, we're seeing it, but hopefully it will not be very bold.
Sure.
And we can, both of us maybe travel to Tehran again
Yeah.
one day.
Who knows?
And who knows? Yeah. And then I'll buy you some tachin from the bazaar.
I'll get some dough and some
Yeah.
kebab.
Oh man,
Yeah,
maybe actually we should order it after this.
that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. And if you have any other thoughts, last comments that you want to make, you're more than welcome to go for it.
Yeah, no, I think we've pretty much talked about everything here.
Yeah.
So,
Hey.
yeah.
Well, thank you for listening, everyone, to the episode 2 of Dentist on Air. As I said, this episode is not these podcasts are not only going to be about teeth, uh, and we're going to cover the reality, the truth without the anesthesia. It's a very open, no judgmental space for us to talk and express our opinions from different point of views. Hey, so thank you for listening and have a good day.
Please fasten your seatbelts.